In this video, we'll look at a government failure. Government failures occur when the government intervenes in the economy in such a way that things get worse rather than better. Generally, economists believe that free, competitive markets are fairly efficient. However, most economists make exceptions for cases of market failures, which I cover in other videos. One may think of these government failures as barriers that get in the way of government being able to fix suspected market failures. The first we'll consider is information problems. A market failure happens when the market doesn't provide maximum value for our resources. That is, when the market fails to produce a socially optimal amount. For example, monopolies may have an incentive to restrict production in order to prop up their prices, or polluters may produce too much since they can ignore some of the costs associated with their production because they don't experience them directly. In these cases, government may improve the outcome by intervening to move the market in the correct direction. However, there's a significant problem here. The socially optimal quantity is not objectively observable. In order to observe it, the government would first have to know the marginal costs of production, which the producer might know if there are no externalities, but there's no good reason for them to report it honestly, if they believe it will be used to regulate them. Second, the government would have to know the marginal benefits of the various production levels. This information is simply impossible to find because we don't observe it. We simply observe transactions. Ludwig von Mises made this point regarding monopolies in particular. He points out that simply observing that there is only one firm in an industry doesn't prove that that firm is a monopoly in the sense of charging a monopoly price. After all, if barriers to entry are fairly low, then the technical monopoly may have to compete with potential entrants, leading them to act competitively as a result. This is a serious, fundamental problem when we try to regulate. Even if we take an indirect approach, like taxing carbon emissions rather than regulating their levels, we have no certain way of evaluating whether we made things better with the regulation. Sure, carbon emissions may have fallen, but we don't know whether they were actually too high to start with. And even if they were, we don't know how much they needed to cut them. Perhaps we overdid it. There's really no way to be sure. Does this mean that it is impossible to estimate the socially optimal level of production? Well, of course not. You can always come up with an estimate. However, estimates are, by nature, uncertain. And as such, our evaluation of any policy that is seeking to move us toward the social optimum must also be uncertain.